All right, Chris, we are live and in living color. So I'm Justin Schoenfelder, founder and CEO of Fantasy Elect, basically giving people the ability to bet on politics. And, it's basically the house always wins there anyway, right? The uniparty, as they say, is always winning.
Right.
But who are you, Chris? Tell us who you are.
I am Chris Matola, a Republican political consultant, media consultant for the last 40 some years.
Awesome. The reason I laughed about Live and In Living Color was an amazing show. I think far better than Saturday Night Live. I liked it better anyway.
Yeah.
Also good was Mad TV, and it reminded me. Did you see what I sent you on
Yes. It was
Twitter?
great.
Wasn't that amazing?
It was great.
And it was like 30 years ago. So anybody who hasn't seen it, well, I'll put the video at the end of this episode, but it's like a 3-minute long segment that Mad TV did where I don't remember the actress's name, but the redheaded actress that was on Mad is pretending to be like it's funny how close her name was to like McBride. I don't remember what the country stars, but it's a country singer basically. And it's all MAGA before there was MAGA. It's anti-immigrant, it's anti-Muslim, it's anti-everything except, and very pro Jesus with an AK-47 was actually one of the lines. I thought it was just 30 years ago, Chris.
Yeah, there was at that point. There was I won't say the concern. There was I will call it the New York Times analysis of kind of where the Republican Party was going. It was going to be this fundamentalist, religiously conservative party that, think kind of Handmaid's Tale kind of stuff. Which, by the way, I thought both the book and the movie, and I saw one episode of the show, was fucking uniformly awful.
I never saw.
Yeah, the book is kind of bizarre, and you kind of read it, you kind of go like, wait a minute, because like dystopian stuff has to have a certain flavor of truth to it, and you kind of go, people don't do that, but that's where they thought. I mean, literally, what she's describing is where people thought the Republican Party was going to go in the '90s. And so you have the multiple married pornographer kind of New York City Donald Trump, which is kind of the opposite of that. And what's interesting is that whole kind of morality piece, and with morality, the pro-life wing of the party is literally a Republican Party just literally is dissipated. I mean, I think it's funny is that 60 years they like the holy grail was to overturn Roe v. Wade, and when they finally did, uh, it was finally overturned by a pro-life guy, pro-life President Trump, and the power, the influence of the pro-life movement is literally non-existent. You don't hear about it anymore. And at one time, it was this powerful cell, this powerful energy within the Republican Party. I mean, it was we talked about how the parties mirrored each other for a long time, and there was the pro-choice in the Democratic Party, which is also kind of dissipated out as it became more about trans stuff, and it kind of lost its cachet, and the same thing with the Republican Party and the pro-life movement on the right. I mean, it doesn't functionally exist anymore for any practical purposes. Maybe in an isolated race, but it's really, I mean, it's fascinating because that was like they were the two pillars, the moral, for lack of a better word, the moral pillars of the party, the philosophical underpinnings of the party.
So is it your contention then that these New York Times analysis of where the Republican Party was going, or the fear of where it was going, is inaccurate? Has been proven to be much ado about nothing. That it
No,
didn't come
I
to
think that
fruition.
when I'm saying the New York Times thing, I don't want to say, Eastern liberal newspaper establishment, but that's really what I kind of,
I knew what you meant.
yeah. I mean, the,
But so is it your contention then that analysis they had in the 90s was quite obviously off base?
yeah, yeah. And,
Really
and if you
interesting.
think, because it was, which is why you see kind of this white nationalism thing keeps trying to, the kind of what I'll call the online left keeps trying to gin up this white nationalism thing, which is, again, it's a thing. But, like Sydney Sweeney doing jeans commercials isn't fucking white nationalism. And they try to keep making it this cachet. But what you saw is the Republican Party become this kind of nationalist, populist economic party that is not particularly religious at all. I think if you look at the religious stuff, most of the religious stuff in the Republican Party, if there's growth at all, it's all among Latinos and African Americans. That's where the actual physical growth of the church is. Um, but it was supposed to be like The Handmaid's Tale, and it's not The Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale is probably the good shorthand of where they thought the party was going to go. But you've got multiple guys with multiple wives, and you've got a, the after Trump, the de facto next head of the Republican Party has an Indian wife, and mixed race kids, and so that kind of thing that it was supposed to be isn't. Because demographics change. The whole idea that demographics is destiny was this kind of really interesting kind of nationalist blood and soil idea that just doesn't hold water. I think what's kind of interesting, and I think kind of hopeful, or I'm optimistic about, is that the Latino thing is that immigrants become Americans without this kind of nativism that kind of rears its ugly head from time to time, and has now, and it's part of the Republican coalition is certainly nativism. But the bigger part, the part with all the energy into it, is this Latino thing that's it's already middle class, but it's becoming upper middle class. And the things that, that upper middle class people tend to care about, and, the economy, the stock market, street safety, good schools, kind of stuff like that, it is more of a concern.
So I want to touch on that, and I think that's actually probably where we should go. But I do just want to ask you, my sense is that the reason that Mad clip was so funny now is because it was still so relevant. So I feel like to be 30 years ago, I think it was actually a bit prophetic. The only thing missing was the idea that people could speak out one side of their mouth and talk about Christianity and Christian values, while on the other side of the mouth say that someone who quite honestly does not embody Christian values is sent from God, and mean it seriously rather than as farce. That's the thing that was missing from that. But we've talked before. I'm on Twitter a lot. Almost every time I see something pro-MAGA, anti-immigrant, everything, when I go to that person's profile, it says dad, Christian, whatever. So I don't see the Christian right dissipating. I think our Israeli policy is governed by a lot of that on the right, not to mention campaign dollars. I don't see it dissipating. And it's funny because you and I actually look at it from opposite sides, probably of the same mirror, which is I think that people determine and know, people know what they want to be true, and then they adjust their beliefs around that to correlate with it. I don't think they have beliefs and go the other way. I think they have a decision. This is what they want the truth to be, and they create the beliefs to go with it. So if you want to believe that Donald Trump is a good Christian sent by God, or maybe not even a good Christian, because what they say is God works through flawed Christians, or whatever their BS answer is. It's very easy to say none of us are perfect. God works through failed, sinners all the time. Donald Trump is quite obviously, God is working through Donald Trump. It may or may not be true. I have no idea. I'm sure God does work through, if there is a God, works through every single thing possibly, right? That same grace, however, to a trans person over here just wanting rights, God's never working through that person for them. Like God, because that's not where their limit. You know what it reminds me of, actually? I don't know if I've ever said this before. I can't think of the author's name, but she wrote Bird by Bird. Anyway, I think she was an alcoholic, and she talks about one of her very dear friends is either a Catholic priest, or I think he's a Catholic priest. And he said to her, I think her name's Annie. Let's say, Annie, you know you've created God in your image when he hates all the same people as you. And that's what I see, actually, is that the Christian right, abortion, it was never about abortion. in my opinion. It couldn't have been, because half of the people that said it was about abortion were paying for their mistresses to have abortions. So what it was about was a type of person that they wanted to hate. And God also hated them. And how did they know that? Because, well, that type of person got an abortion and they're a sinner. Now, when somebody in their family gets it, well, they are then a sinner and love the sinner, hate the sin. But when somebody else does it, that person's the devil. So I think we're looking at it at the same thing, but we're seeing it from two different angles.
Yeah,
Does
no,
that?
I totally. I mean, we can parse what you said, but in terms of looking at it from the same thing, yeah, it's we mold our core beliefs to be convenient. I mean, the you can't be the idea that you are pro-life and pro-death penalty, and the inverse of that there's some kind of sanctity of life, but we're not going to be for the.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, yeah, and and it's like, well, we should tax more because Jesus said, "Give your cloak." I mean, you can kind of, yeah, no, I agree with that, but I kind of go that it was a faulty analysis it was a 90s faulty analysis, is because at their core, the people never really wanted to run a theocratic society like a Middle Eastern country that's based around religion. What they wanted was power and influence and the same shit that, everybody wanted. It was, it's like finding a, hypocritical mega church pastor. Holy fuck, really? They were in it for the money? That's a shock. I mean, and the same thing, but you see the same thing on the other side. I mean, Planned Parenthood is a really good example that they've got a bunch of crises within the organization, not the least of which is funding. But if apparently on their website the word women no longer exists on like their homepage because it's like,
What is it? Menstruating people now or
yeah,
something?
no,
What is it?
but it's a lot of like trans men who can be pregnant, and so you can argue that their core system was never about women; it was about something else. And the same thing with the evangelical right. You can argue that it was never about what would Jesus do. It was about, again. I mean, we've said this a million times. Politics is not about morality. It is not about philosophy. It's about fucking power. And and your core beliefs always seem to mirror what gets you power. And again, I mean, by the way, it doesn't mean there aren't like a lot of really good people who are consistent, and there's a lot of conservative think tank people who are on the ramparts about Trump tariffs and Trump taxes and tax cuts and deficits and stuff like that, and all these people are admirable consistency, and they're civil libertarians on the left that are that during some of the worst excesses of cancellation and speech, they were again, they remain in the ramparts on it, and those people are admirable and need to be celebrated. But that doesn't win you elections, and that's not what parties do. I mean, if a party doesn't win an election or is least competitive, they're out of business. I mean,
Right.
you become the Whig Party. I mean, again,
Right.
people forget that the Whig Party pretty much disappeared in 2 elections, and it was the dominant party in American for not quite 100 years, but for the better part of the first century, and then 2 fucking elections, it was pretty much gone. And I think that party people, if they don't know the history, they certainly know it instinctually.
Mm. Okay, so you mentioned there at the end about demographics is destiny, and you were talking about Hispanics. I've said before on the show, and I stick by it. One of my rules in life is never expect me to care about you more than you care about you. So I mentioned this in the ICE deportations, the 20 point move to the right by the Hispanic community for Trump. If I was president, I wouldn't go about ICE deportations the way that he has. But then again, maybe then the Hispanic community wouldn't have voted for me either. You know what I mean? So, um, but what you said is something that I've thought about a couple of times, and I wonder what your take on this is. For the longest time, and I will be the first to acknowledge this, the open borders, borders are racist party was the AOCs and the squatties of the progressive left. And the idea was on the right that the goal was to just get the Hispanics and other people from third world countries in to turn them into citizens so they can vote, right? At least that was like the boogeyman reason that the Republicans used to
Replacement theory, yeah.
to cudgel them. Yes, replacement theory. Thank you, Tucker Carlson, for really publicizing that one. Although Tucker has grown on me a bit. The thing I don't think I've ever mentioned to you was that I've had a thought for a while that it actually wouldn't be that way, because at their core, many of the immigrants coming to the United States now are not coming for freedom, they're coming for economics. And they actually have no issue with authoritarianism and have no tradition of liberal American values, and that they actually will tend to the right over a longer period of time. And I think when you just said this about the Hispanic community, I was like, oh shit, we've never talked about this, but this is my theory. So what do you think of my theory? Is there any basis in it, or is it just
No, I think there's a basis on it, and people have used that to explain why people of Cuban extraction are more conservative than others, because they both come from a Castro and from a Batista. They come from a long line of strongmen. And, I agree with you entirely that it's not a freedom asylum thing. It's an economic thing. And that's kind of why people want to come, because you can come and hustle and make money. And in a generation, you don't have to be a dirt farmer or a laborer. You can be a business owner. And again, and that's the American dream. I think that,
and if I could just add, while you're putting the thought together, maybe respond to this as well. I now believe is demonstrably true that economic liberalism does not lead to governmental liberalism. China is an example that the idea that if you give people better quality of living, they will also want more rights. I think that's true to a certain extent, but eventually I actually think it's a law of diminishing returns, where if the power structure authoritarian is able to deliver more and more economic stability and growth, they don't actually question the power structure.
yeah, I think that there is a tax, like we know at a certain tax rate, revenues decline. I think it's the same argument with the freedom rate. As long as there's, more money lubricating the system, and that you're willing to give up certain rights, or you're giving up certain things for economic stability or economic ease. And again, and I think that is an ongoing battle. I mean, it was, Jefferson had said, money, not morality, is the principal commerce of civilized nations. And, once again, he was fucking right. So what I think is interesting with the Latino bit is that in the kind of the political news, there's all kinds of, Texas is talking about redistricting to get more seats. And
Yeah.
California said, we're going to overturn our constitution, and we're going to redo it.
Illinois as well, I think, or some other state
Yeah,
as well, right?
a bunch of states are.
I think Pritzker said that as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and part of the problem with Illinois and California is you really can't, and New Jersey and Massachusetts, there's really no more juice to squeeze out of the gerrymander. It is. Texas right now is a 60-40 Republican state in vote, roughly, and Democrats have roughly 36% of the seats, or 42, whatever it is. Basically, it is a +6 gerrymander. Texas is, where California is or Illinois is like a +29 gerrymander, and California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, a lot of it, forgetting if they can do it legally, but a lot of it is idle threats, because there's not that much juice like California, I think, or Illinois is like, they're 18% of the seats are Republican in a state that normally votes, 44, 45% Republican. But putting all that bullshit aside for a minute, what's really interesting is I looked at the Texas districts this morning, and all these new Republican districts, and I think a court will kick it out because it looks, frankly, ridiculous. Again, I mean, I looked at it really quickly, but how many of the new seats they're creating are majority Hispanic seats? So if you went back to 2012 and you say Texas is going to gerrymander 10 new seats, and they're going to be, and 8 of them are going to be majority Hispanic, and every one of them is going to increase, you would say, though, everybody in politics would say, those fucking Democrats, or those clever Democrats. You would assume that was a Democratic thing, and it's not. And I'll be patriotic here, and that's kind of the greatness of America, is that people are not held down by opinion leaders and journalists and politicians. They kind of create their own reality. And frankly, when these districts become really wealthy and the people become wealthy and upper middle class, they're going to be voting blue. And you're going to go through this whole fight again. They become suburban New Jersey or suburban Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So are you
Yeah.
seeing on your side internally in politics, is there a striation of the Hispanic community according to according to economics for voting demographics? Does it track with the rest of the population?
They're overwhelmingly becoming more conservative. There's been like a 20-point shift to Republicans and almost like a 40-point shift to conservatives among a lot of the groups. And again, when you say Latino, it's like if you're saying Puerto Rican, you're not saying Cuban. I mean, it's the easiest way to think about it. They're totally different groups, but to generalize, they're becoming more conservative because FICA taxes hit them the hardest. If you are a paycheck person, if you are not I'm living on the stock market or I'm doing flipping real estate. But if you are a paycheck person, taxes hit you the hardest. And so that makes you more conservative. And if you have bought a home or have a neighborhood, crime affects your bottom line for the worth of your house. And so schools affect neighborhoods with good schools, you get more for your house. I mean, and so I think as, Latinos in places like Texas become wealthier, they become more conservative and more Republican because they have more to lose. And I also think that there is a cultural thing, is that, a lot of what I will call the online left is that you just can't be pro-choice. You have to be pro-trans and pro this and pro that. And like, if you don't, you're kind of a heretic, and again, I mean, I thought the Sydney Sweeney thing was remarkable. And like, whoever came up with that campaign for, American Eagle, God fucking bless them, because they're generating articles in every periodical and every news station, about. And, what's really interesting is how few of these think pieces, and I will small t on that one,
Right.
don't even reference the original Brooke Shields commercial. Because if you look at the original Brooke Shields commercial for Calvin Klein's, she talks a lot about genetics in it. And literally, it is a dumbed down version of that. But the original Brooke Shields commercial, it's frankly a lot more suggestive. It's a lot more articulate. And in it, she's 14 years old. Good fucking
Yeah.
luck doing that now.
Right. Right.
And, but it's also interesting is that, along with her great beauty, Brooke Shields was super smart. I mean, she was like a Princeton. Yeah, it was
I think
Princeton.
she was in Mensa,
Yeah, I mean, she's genius IQ and
or is in
super
Mensa.
smart. And if you listen, the spot's worth finding, because if you listen, you can find it on Twitter or X. But if you look at it, it's an incredibly sophisticated argument for the minute. I mean, I saw it I saw it. I hadn't seen it in decades, and I saw it and I was laughing because it was so funny. It was like the idea that that somebody would put that copy on TV now.
Mhm.
No fucking way. I mean, you can't even hear you can't hear that level of discourse anywhere, which is kind of funny and sad, but and it was coming from a fucking 14-year-old girl.
Well, it's certainly ironic that as we think human beings are getting smarter, we seem to be getting dumber. I mean, like, it wasn't that long ago that, granted, there may have been higher rates of illiteracy. I don't know, but I mean, they were reading like Homer and shit, even in like country schoolhouses, like that was what they had to read. And now, I don't know. I mean, I'm not one for the My Two Daddies book or whatever. I
Mhm.
mean, personally, can we just go back to reading real literature? I don't know. And I don't care if it's two dads in the real literature, but like there was a time where the reading actually took effort. If you read older books, you realize there is a difference very
Yeah,
quickly.
I follow a bunch of academics online, and
For fun, or
yeah, they're English people, and
glutton for
frankly,
punishment.
they talk about literature in interesting ways and introduce new books. I mean, and again, they're not, I mean, it's not highfalutin. One of the recommendations, which I read I flew back east recently, it's called Fever House. And it's this great book about like secret government agencies and the devil's arm and saint relics and
Kind of like Da
zombies.
Vinci Code. Oh, with zombies, you threw me off
And
there.
it's this kind of punk rock kind of thing and like rock stars. I mean, it's this crazy thing of, and I say this in the best possible terms, of absolute crap, and it's fucking great. I mean, it's delicious. It's like a page turner and what happens next, and it's just like, but it's kind of an original pastiche of stuff. But so I follow that. But one of the things that universally they say is that how many of their freshman students can't read. They can read, but they can't understand a novel.
Right.
They can't understand, like you read, which I don't like, but you read Jane Austen, and a lot of it is to be understood is that what people are saying is not what they mean, and that kind of subtlety is gone. And again, I think real literature can be hard, and it is rewarding. I mean, when I graduated college, I decided to finally read Moby Dick, and it took me 6 months and cliff notes and criticisms and going to the library to find an analysis. I mean, it is a very difficult but rewarding book. And the idea that you're going to get somebody to read Moby Dick now is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But again, there is something lost. And if you look at the stuff they're reading excerpts, they're reading pieces, they're reading books that aren't not only unchallenging in the way they're written, but the content is unchallenging. Um, a lot of the Hemingway stuff, The Sun Also Rises, a lot of the content in that, it is very challenging. I mean, because if it's racist and misogynistic and, our hero in it, you know, has no dick, or has no balls. I mean, he can't get it up. I mean, that's the fucking
Yeah.
hero. That's the hero of a Hemingway book, that he's incapacitated because of a war injury, which is really challenging.
Yeah.
It's not the fucking Hunger Games where everybody has this, God from the machine thing or this secret ability or some bullshit I mean, it's a guy that can't get it up and he's in love with a woman who's, you know,
This is exactly what it's funny because over the weekend I was going through some of our content and posting some things, and we were talking about the Twilight Zone and the morality plays and stuff, right? And like, we, again, who's going to bet? Okay, let me put it to you this way. There was an analysis I heard recently that, fairly or unfairly, I'll leave it to you to argue with me or to present to me which one it is, but that the Republican, if you were to look just at the US, but they actually talked about other countries as well, but let's say the Republican Party in the United States they are not winning elections in spite of their immorality, but because of it, that they give people an excuse to behave in ways that they normally wouldn't, and that they're actually ashamed of deep down. And their way of dealing with that shame is to flip it and turn it into wanting to own the libs. And that may or may not be a fair analysis. I'll leave that to you. If it is or if it isn't, how does that dovetail with seemingly our inability as people to wrestle with these critically with these ideas of imperfect perfection or perfect imperfections, and that there is no good guy, there is no bad guy, there's only types of gray, and you have to make a stand somewhere and just kind of draw your own line in the sand. And that, to me, some of the best literature in history, that's what it's about, that we're all flawed, but we have to stand for something. And I heard somebody say the other day, actually, it was actually a guy on Twitter last night, I think. He said it was about Jeffrey Epstein, about Donald Trump, and he was calling out MAGA Republicans or people that said, why haven't Democrats ever used, Jeffrey Epstein and pointed out that Trump is on the list? And he said they did. They've shown every picture. They've shown every video of them together. They've shown the clips of Epstein saying that Donald Trump was his best friend for 15 years. They've shown video of Donald Trump saying that Jeffrey Epstein was his best friend of many years, and also saying he likes some of the same women I like, although he likes them a little bit on the young side, I hear. blah, 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 blah. He's like, it was all shown to you. You just don't really care because you're that immoral and you don't stand for anything. Now, I don't mean this as picking on the right, but to your point about where things are going, seems to me that it is the right that is going to be the big beneficiary of that, because there doesn't seem to, it seems too simple on the right that things are good or bad. And if you're bad, but you're fighting bad, Donald Trump is a bad Christian, but he's fighting the people that you think are bad. So therefore he's supported by God. That simplistic thinking is easy. Whereas it's a little bit hard to say, do I think a man and a woman are the same thing or you can choose? No, personally, I don't. But do I think that somebody else has the right to think that and that they shouldn't be treated any differently under the color of law? Yeah, I do think that. Like, I don't have to agree with you to believe that you have the right to be whoever you want to be, even if that means that you're that woman from Oregon or Washington who said that she was black when she was quite obviously a white woman and she was the head of the NAACP in Oregon. Like, choose whatever you want to be and be it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Rachel Dolezal, wasn't that her
Yeah.
name?
Right.
So how do those things fit together, Chris?
Yeah, and I think they do fit together. I think we all politics people use a belief system to gain power, and I think that, and again, I think it's all about gaining power. Very little in the Epstein list for 4 years until it could be used as a cudgel against Trump, and all of a sudden this is some kind of a priority. And by the way, I think the Trump people brought it on themselves.
Yeah.
I think that there is scant. Sorry.
That's all right. Good song.
Yeah, that's my ringtone for my wife. I think there is scant evidence that Trump was on Epstein Island and a pedophile. I mean, there needs to be more. I think there is scant evidence by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that, to your point, that we use current politics to enforce a morality, which coincidentally happens to give us power. I mean, the greatest thing is we all had to hide in our houses and we couldn't go to funerals or bury fucking granny, but then because of COVID. But if you wanted hundreds of thousands of people wanted to gather in the street for a George Floyd protest, fuck it, great, let's go.
100% agree with you.
And I think, and the same thing, it's like you can make the reasonable thing that we shouldn't have loser Confederate statues in town square. That's great. And then the idea that we also have to replace Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Alexander Dumas and whoever else because, they own slaves is ridiculous. I mean, it's a debate, sure, but like, who are we replacing them with?
Right.
And, and it's, Christopher Columbus, who wasn't even Italian. I mean, he was probably a Catalan or something. He's probably Spanish, he might've been a Spanish Jubo, but, that becomes a cudgel and we can take down those statues,
Right.
which is why, if you're following them renaming the bases,
Right.
military bases, that's going back and forth. I'm like, well, no shit. Like we just did that, and we spent 5 years renaming shit we didn't like. And now we're going to rename it again. And the only consistency is not principle. It's that it's my power, not yours. So yeah, I think that, but I think one of the places that literature and I think the popular arts, I mean, TV and movies used to hold as a place is to introduce these hard topics of morality, of culture to the masses. I mean, not too long ago, I mean, when Bill Clinton was running for president, a majority of Americans, or I'm sorry, when George H.W. Bush was running for president, a majority of Americans did not favor interracial marriage. And when Bill Clinton was president, by a large fucking swath, we were all against gay marriage. I mean, America was against gay marriage. I mean, Obama was against gay marriage until 2015. Hillary was still kind of parsing it in 2016. And now, if you said I'm against gay marriage, you would say, "Oh, you fucking Nazi? What's the matter with you?"
Right.
Um,
Right.
And and by the way, when you look around the world, like something that shouldn't be controversial, like gay adoption, a gay adoption is not allowed in majority of Europe. Which you kind of go like, really? But yeah. And so, but I think in terms of literature and movies and stuff, and again, I'm all for. I mean, like I'm going to go out and watch, the remake and reboot of The Naked Gun again this weekend because it's stupid and I love that. But I think that there's a lot of literature, and especially a lot of TV, that has been lost with stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And there is no morality. I mean, one of the most kind of horrifying movies I think ever made is called Requiem for a Heavyweight. And it was originally written by Rod Serling. We're talking about Twilight Zones. It was originally written by Rod Serling. It was a TV show that they turned into a movie. And like, I've seen it once and I never have to see it again because it is human nature at its absolute fucking worst. And like it feels like somebody ripped a piece of your soul out when you watched it. But it's a cautionary tale about money and about power and frankly about friendship.
Mm.
It's about the power of friendship and owing life debts. And it's fucking horrifying. But that kind of stuff is really good to be in the culture. And like a movie that I didn't care for, but was very important to be in the culture is Brokeback Mountain, and
Never saw it, actually.
I'm not a fan, but, but even, stuff like before that in the early 80s in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, there was a really great movie called Longtime Companion that takes place in San Francisco, and it's about early AIDS patients dying.
Yeah.
And the kind of like, you're a life partner, but you have no rights.
Right. Right.
And that kind of stuff is really important, I think. And if you look at the so-called important movies of the past couple of years, they're all really, banal or they're just fucking stupid. And I think the culture's lost something because of that.
Yeah, I think like you touched on it, is that we aren't on both sides. So for instance, there's no wrestling with that great morality tale of gray. So I guess the way I would frame it is like no one is perfect. So if you're judging Thomas Jefferson or George Washington for having slaves in an era where that was the norm, using your morality now, then you're pretty fucking dense because morality changes over time, geography, it's fluid. And if you have an iPhone, you are part of slavery right now. Let's just be honest with the way that the world actually works. So stop acting like you don't have blood on your hands, right? Yeah. And I have an iPhone. I acknowledge my own part to play in slavery, right? But what did Thomas Jefferson or George Washington add to the cause of humanity as a whole? There is nuance to the view of those people. To me, that is different than naming an American military base after Hood, who was literally killing American soldiers on the battlefield. I've always said if you want to keep the Confederate statues, great, put the statue of an American Northern soldier in front of that person and have him shoot that, like make the statue him shooting that American with the American flag in his hand. Make that your statue because at least that's historically accurate. What they really did is they put these up during the late early 1900s, around 1910, 1915, when the Klan was making a huge rebirth, birth of a nation, all of that, right? So it's like there was a reason that those monuments went up and they were really making a statement, is what they're making. I don't think they added anything. I don't think Hood, I don't think Lee, I don't think any of these people added anything positive to the cause of humanity. I think that Jefferson did. I think that Washington did. They also had slaves. So, do you know what I'm saying? It's on balance. What did you add or take away? That's the question. That's how I fall on
Can I tell you? I'll tell you. I'll get on one of my favorite sidebars, and
it.
you said it, and it's something I've tried to write, and in my retirement, I'm going to research it because it's way too good. So, as you point out, proliferation of all these statues kind of happened in a certain time period. Part of the reason it happened is because there was a concrete company in Illinois, and the problem with concrete is you cannot pour it in the winter. Doesn't set. When it's freezing cold, you can't pour it. It doesn't set. That's kind of the way it works. Or it sets slowly. It becomes problematic. And so these guys thought, well, fuck, what can I do to make, money in the winter? I don't have to lay off these people. Somebody said, well, we can make statues. And so they hired salespeople to go around to all these small southern towns and say, fine town you have here. I'm General, or I am, Howard Beauregard the Fourth. My grandfather fought in the Battle of Antietam. And, they do that. They hired guys to like bullshit these people. And they said, you have a fine town, but you're missing one thing. You're missing a statue. And with the darky, they did the whole racist bit, and they would get commissions for these statues. They would take money. They would go back to Chicago in the winter. They would make these statues, and if you look at them, they're all kind of, I will say ambivalent quality, but they're only like a couple of forms, because these were
Yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
mass produced, and they add the name, and so literally it was this kind of scam thing, and I think that is potentially, and again, I think it's a comedy. I think it's funny.
That's definitely a comedy for sure.
But I think it's kind of like the Music Man, that the hustlers come into town and they take the locals. But that is, it's absolutely a true story. And you find little pieces, little fragments of it. And the first time I'd spent like a week in the library, it's back in Philly, found enough pieces of it to have notes on it. But it's fucking delicious. I mean, so all these statues and these, like, and again, if you've driven through the South, you've driven through these things.
Yeah, yeah,
You'll
yeah.
drive in, it'll be this little town in nowhere in town square, and there'll be some guy standing there like that. Beauregard,
I had
Humperdinck,
no
and
idea. I had no
yeah,
idea, Chris. That's amazing.
it's great. But it's like, and so like our heritage is a scam by some dude in fucking Illinois that
Yeah.
was looking to make money during the winter. Might have
Oh,
been in Indiana, the factory was, but anyway, but it's a great piece of, but like, but that is American history. I mean, that's kind of
yes.
like, that's the shit we're fighting about.
Right.
And
It's
yeah,
funny enough that you say that. And a little bit to go along with like the complexity of humans. Like I said, Tucker Carlson has grown on me a bit. I used to just outright
yeah.
disdain that person. Um, I don't agree with what he says probably even 50% of the time, but I appreciate the fact that he has varied views and he's willing to air different opinions. Um, by the way, I don't know if you ever did get a chance to watch. I sent you the Ted Cruz interview that he did.
I only saw a piece of it.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, it's great entertainment, Chris. You must watch
Okay.
it. You really must. It's on Tucker Carlson's Twitter account. You just scroll down and find Cruz and you can watch the whole thing. But to that point, I wrote last night on Twitter in response to I think it was PBS News. Marjorie Taylor Greene was the first Republican to call the Israeli conflict a genocide, or the what's happening in Gaza a genocide. And I wrote, who had on their bingo card that Marjorie Taylor Greene would be the voice of like the Gazan genocide before like AOC or any of the squad? You know what I mean? Like, I think actually, what's her face, the Ilhan Omar
Yeah.
already called it a genocide, but like AOC has very much tacked to the middle as she thinks she's going to run for president or something. Were you as shocked as me? I feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene is becoming she's also becoming more nuanced in my view. She used to be a caricature of a Southern idiot like MAGA.
Mhm.
And now she was on Tucker. She was talking about different things. And like, it goes to show like my own biases. You can't just judge people offhand because they shock you sometimes. You can agree on things and you're like, I have no idea. Not that I'm not even going to put my own opinion about Israel out there, but mostly because I don't want to get canceled. But yeah, like, isn't that shocking? Were you shocked by that?
Surprised as opposed to shocked. I mean, like
Surprised.
literally, she's the two-button meme of the guy sweating about which button the thing, and like,
Okay.
if you're pro-Palestinian, to see that, I mean, that's literally
Right.
that. And again, I mean, she blows with the prevailing winds. And that is the current wind.
Doesn't every single politician though? She must be a very astute politician then, because she seems to know what you and I have been talking about is that the
I mean,
wind is not blowing in favor of Israel at this point.
no, and she's either astute or
Opportunist.
yeah. I mean, that's, and our astute people are opportunists. I mean, you look at history; it's I was the isolationist before I became the warhawk. I was this,
Right.
that, you know, I was the
Yeah.
warhawk before I became the isolationist.
Yeah.
I mean,
John Kerry, I voted against it before I voted for it.
yeah, and you know, so I kind of yeah, okay is basically what I will say to her. But no, but I mean, you know, it is really kind of interesting. But I think that kind of goes to what we constantly talk about is that, you know, it is not about any kind of longstanding principle. It is about what is trendy, and I think that the whiplash of this shit happens just simply because everything moves so fast now. News moves so fast. Like, you know, last night I spent 2 hours looking at tidal waves and tsunamis. You know, this morning I forgot to check it,
Yeah, me
right?
too.
And
Yeah.
then, you know,
Last thing I saw was that they were already hitting Russia or something. I was like, what I saw.
yeah. And, you know, by the way, there was a great thing is that the National Weather Service had to say, no, was it Bismarck, North Dakota is not going to be, or North Forks, you know, North Dakota is not going to be hit. They actually had to send out and I'm like, Jesus, you know.
Well, what about, okay, so
Yeah.
maybe the last big piece of what's happened recently. What's your take on the tariffs and Scotland for Trump? Big success? I mean, this guy is, if nothing else, I actually said to somebody in the middle of the first Trump administration, if you love or hate Trump, regardless, everyone should be a bit more like Trump. I don't know if you know, now I can't think of her name, really famous woman who's given some like TED Talks about shame. A lot of women read her books. One was given to me. I read it. I liked what it said, but she's very anti-shame person, right?
Mhm.
Saying that like we shouldn't carry so much shame, it limits us. And I said to the person, I was like, everybody should be a bit more like Trump. He has no shame and he twists everything to his advantage. And that's what most people should add more of in their life. And that has been playing over and over again in my head because the Japanese said, actually, of the $550 billion that we agreed to, only 3% of it is actually a direct investment. The rest of it is tax deferred, full interest rate loans or something like that. Like they literally, now, what they're missing about the whole thing is that Trump now owns the messaging. Like what's the thing? Like a lie can circumnavigate the earth before the truth gets out of the starting blocks or something like that. It's like nobody cares about the specifics now that the big headline's already out. Like nobody's reading that. And I think he knows that, right? So he can say, we have all these deals, we're doing this, we're doing that, and then they can come back later and we're like, well, you know, actually we're gonna make a shit ton of money on this and it's not a direct investment or something. But I think he's winning on the Trump side, on the tariff side as well, no?
Yeah. And there was a news article today in, I think, Reuters that the U.S. economy improved unexpectedly last quarter. I was listening to NPR on my way home in the car yesterday, and I thought they were going to have a fucking stroke reporting that the trade deficit is down and exports are up. You know, so I mean, ho ho ho, if he's right and everybody else is wrong on this. But I think I agree with you. What it is that, you know, whatever it is, they're declaring success,
That's right.
right? And it's not. I mean, they're basically, you know, the language doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's just it's an ongoing moving deal. And by the way, I'm the pro shame. I think we need more shame, you know, and because I think it's the little grifting shit, you know, that you know.
I didn't mean go full Trump. I just meant a
Yeah,
little bit
no. I mean, it's,
more of that.
you know, it's like as I go to the supermarket, like put your fucking cart back. You know, I mean, like those people need to be shamed. You need to have that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there needs to be the, like they have in China, they have the
Social credit. Yeah.
social credit, right? There needs to be like that needs to be like not putting your cart back. But again, you know, and I think the shame thing leads to low trust societies because you can't trust people to do the right thing.
Mm.
You know?
To your point quickly about the tariffs and stuff, I'm not rooting for American failure
Yeah,
ever. And regardless of who gets credit for it.
yeah,
I think, however, God, was it Machiavelli though? Somebody, we talked a bit before about give your enemy a golden bridge on which to escape.
yeah,
There was also a famous quote, and it might just be in the Machiavellians, but I think it was part of Livy, not necessity. Dependence breeds resentment.
yeah. It's good.
And it's been playing in my mind because we are celebrating really the idea that, oh, we stuck it to them. And there was even somebody wrote that Trump is successful right now, is actually like a VC dude that I couldn't disagree with more. And he kind of made me a bit nauseous reading his posts. But what he's done is he's monetized American dependence, like dependence on
Oh, that's good.
America.
That's good for
Yeah.
yeah.
And I thought dependence breeds resentment, and long-term friends, I think, we're losing. They'll do deals. Everyone is a politician. They understand. But the next time when there's a moment, and this goes back to like my interest in intelligence, Rice, reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. Every intelligence officer would say, or every American CIA officer that I've ever heard says coercion is the worst to use, because the moment that agent has the ability to hurt you, they will. And I think we can celebrate, exports are up, the trade deficit is down, yada, yada. Yeah, cool. But did we put them in a position where they felt subservient to us? Did we breed hostility that will last for a lot longer than those benefits? That's my question. Or maybe we've been doing that all along, so who cares? I don't
I
know.
have some travel books, like older travel books, like older Baedekers back there and similar stuff. And what's interesting is that the resentment of foreigners to the United States after World War II, which I always considered, like, I would have liked to see Europe, and places back, frankly, pre-air conditioning, and I would have loved to seen Hong Kong in the 50s. I mean, that would have been fucking dope,
Yeah.
right?
Hell yeah.
But a lot of Europe was very resentful because of the Marshall, because we fucking rebuilt Europe and everything was dependent upon American dollars. And, and there was a fair amount of tourist resentment that by the time I started traveling in the 80s just didn't exist anymore, because everybody was on kind of more or less equal footing. And it was, that really was the golden time to travel. But I really wanted to go back and travel that. But I was shocked when I would pick these up in used bookstores that there was a resentment. And to your point, that they were dependent upon American dollars and American aid for survival. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think good for us in the short term, good for Trump. If it's good for America, the things
Yeah.
are
And by
looking
the way,
good.
I'm with you that, like, no matter who's been president, who's been running Congress, it's like these people, people rooting for them to succeed. I always want to say, where the fuck is your 401k invested? Because I know where
Right.
mine is, and it's like, yeah, yeah, I really want to crash the economy so I can continue to work for another 20 fucking years.
Yeah, simply so I can be part of a winning team when you don't even get a fucking prize if you're on that team. Like, who
Right?
cares?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Unless I was selling
uh,
short, maybe, right?
right, exactly, exactly. All right, I think maybe the last thing to wrap it up, I have an asshole of the week, but I'm
Okay.
curious if you have an asshole of the week.
No.
Oh, really? You know who my asshole of the week is?
Oh.
That head of schools, the school board superintendent in Oklahoma, that they said he was watching like porn or something on
Oh,
his.
yes. And he put it up on the, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's the one that wanted the Trump Bible in all of Oklahoma's schools.
that's
Fuck
awesome.
that guy.
Yeah. What are the odds of that? Like 70%?
Honestly, the odds aren't that bad anymore, Chris. Did you see where that guy, that MAGA guy, who's the husband of some dele- Trump delegate in Wisconsin or somewhere, has been arrested for having kitty porn on his thing? And then did you see where the Republican in, was it Florida, was arrested for sending nude messages via text to some like underage girl, like 35 messages? What's so interesting to me is that there are actual real creepers, and it's regardless of party.
Yeah.
But it does seem that one party seems to act as if they have the moral high ground, but that is where the majority of cases seem to get the most. Maybe it's just publicity, I don't know, but they're the ones I hear about the most.
I have a
Maybe I'm
friend.
wrong.
I have a friend that says you can always tell the difference between a Republican sex scandal and a Democratic sex scandal is because the Republican sex scandal usually involves more than one man.
I thought you were going to say a little boy.
Yeah, no, but it normally involves that. But I mean, if you type in, type in school teachers and sex,
Right.
and coaches, pastors, teachers, counselors. I mean, and the grotesquely put is that you go duck hunting where the ducks are. and pedophiles gravitate to where children are. Daycare. I mean, by the way, next time I want to talk about McMaster, the McMaster satanic cult thing in California in the.
Oh, okay, I'd love to talk
It's a
about
goodie. I've been going down that.
We also need to go back to the infestation of gangs into ICE, because I feel as I was watching our content, I realized that we never really thoroughly got into that because of my conspiracy theory divergence. But
yeah, let's do ICE and devil worship next week.
I love it. ICE and devil worship. I love it. All right, I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you next week.
You bet.
Bye.
Take back America to 1955. Take back America to when God was still alive. Truer words were never spoke or sung. Hi, I'm Darlene McBride. You know, I love this country the way it used to be. Simple-minded with simple values for simple people. But then the big government, the Supreme Court, and those bleeding heart liberals just couldn't leave well enough alone. And now look at it. A big, ugly melting pot just boiling over on what used to be a nice, white stove. That's why I decided to launch my Take Back America tour across this great country. I'll be coming to a city near you, singing inspirational songs filled with traditional values. The Lord loves the NRA, he told me so the other day. He spelled it out in bullets in the sky. He's sitting up in heaven with his AK-47. He's a rough and ready macho kind of guy. Yeehaw! Excuse me, Mr. Negro, but I'd like to ask you a question. What's so bad about the back of the bus? You still got a seat like the rest of us. I don't understand all the fuss about you sitting in the back of the bus. Nothing would be finer than to drop a bomb on China in the morning. Nothing would be sweeter than to shoot a welfare cheater in the morning. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the effect of illegal immigration on the overburdened healthcare system. Well, here's my solution. Hey, senorita, put down that fajita. Don't tell me you're eating for two. Before you break water, I've got an order that I'm about to give to you. Get your butt back to Mexico. Adios, and that's that. Get your butt back to Mexico. And then have your bread. Su casa, you hear? Take back America.
Be sure to catch Darlene in these cities on her upcoming tour. Laramie, Dallas, Little Rock, Amarillo, Topeka, Rapid City, Des Moines, Duluth, and Paducah.
Let's take it back, y'all. I look forward to taking back America with you. Remember, folks, it is not too late to give this great country of ours a fresh coat of white paint. And you heard that from me, Darlene McBride. Bye-bye.